Welcome to World Builders, Legends, and Emerging Literary Voices. Some of these works are already canon. Others are still forming. Some exist only as drafts, notes, and intention, but their gravity is already being felt. Together, they map how science fiction thinks. In this series, we look at how these books were made, how their authors write, and what they are trying to tell the reader. Not the plot, the idea beneath it. Not the spectacle, the warning. These stories don't predict the future, they interrogate it. Consider this an open archive. First, we begin with my all-time world-building epic. A work so structurally complete that it created space for generations of readers to argue, extend, and imitate it. Not by copying its story, but by living inside its unanswered questions. Dune didn't inspire spin-offs because of what it explained. It endured because of what it refused to. Frank Herbert understood that the most powerful worlds are built around absence. The gaps, the silences, the unrecorded histories that force the reader to participate. This is fiction that invites excavation. The struggle to publish it was never about rejection alone. It was about belief. Herbert wasn't asking readers to escape into another world. He was asking them to confront how worlds are made, and how easily they are controlled. That is why we start here. Next, we move to Hyperion. If Dune taught science fiction to fear belief, Hyperion taught it to fear story. Dan Simmons didn't build a universe around a hero or a prophecy. He built it around voices. 7 pilgrims, 7 confessions. Each one a different way of telling the truth, or hiding from it. The structure wasn't a gimmick, it was the point. Simmons understood that civilizations don't collapse because they lack technology. They collapse because they lose meaning. In Hyperion, humanity has perfected travel, communication, and a power, and still doesn't know what it believes in. The Shrike isn't the mystery people remember. It's the consequence. A figure born from time, faith, and violence. What happens when history starts answering back? Where Herbert dismantled the myth of the savior, Simmons dismantled the myth of narrative itself. He asks a quieter, more dangerous question. What if the stories we tell to survive are the very things that trap us? Hyperion isn't about the future. It's about the moment a culture realizes it no longer understands the stories holding it together. Then comes Foundation. Isaac Asimov was barely out of his teens when he began writing it. He wasn't trying to build a myth. He was trying to solve a problem. Where earlier science fiction chased heroes and inventions, Asimov turned his attention to civilizations themselves. How they rise, how they decay, and how little individual will matters when systems take over. Foundation begins with a calculation, not a battle. Hari Seldon's psychohistory isn't magic. It's arrogance disciplined by mathematics. Asimov believed that if you understood people in sufficient numbers, history could be predicted, and possibly shortened, corrected, managed. That idea was radical not because it was cold, but because it removed the comfort of destiny. There are no chosen ones here, only probabilities. It was a good thing this book was taken seriously, because it forced science fiction to grow up early, to stop asking what a hero might do and start asking what a civilization cannot avoid. Where Dune warns about belief and Hyperion warns about story, Foundation warns about certainty. And in doing so, it quietly asks its most dangerous question. What happens when reason becomes something we worship? Then comes The Dispossessed. Ursula K. Le Guin didn't write this book to design a better system. She wrote it to show why systems fail. Where Asimov trusted equations and Herbert mistrusted belief, Le Guin mistrusted certainty itself. She built two worlds in permanent orbit around each other, one rich, hierarchical and unequal, the other poor, communal, and ideologically pure. Neither is free. The genius of the dispossessed is that it refuses to choose sides. It exposes how even the most ideal visions harden into control. Le Guin wasn't interested in conquest, prophecy, or technological triumph. She was interested in people, how kindness survives under pressure, and how ideology erodes empathy. This is science fiction written as moral inquiry, not a utopia, an argument. And the quiet warning at its center is this: any society that stops questioning itself has already begun to close its doors. Then we arrive at the left hand of darkness. This is the book where science fiction stopped describing futures and started examining what it means to be human. Ursula K. Le Guin didn't use alien worlds to escape reality. She used them to strip it bare. The story follows an envoy sent to a frozen planet to negotiate an alliance. But diplomacy is only the surface task. What he actually confronts is difference itself. On Gethin, there is no fixed gender, no permanent male or female identity, only people, shifting over time. Language, emotion, and biology collapse into a single landscape. And through that collapse, Le Guin exposes a deeper truth. Identity is not something we possess. It's something that only exists in relation to others. Where Herbert explored ecology, Asimov explored order, and Banks explored guilt, Le Guin explored being. Her achievement wasn't prediction, it was empathy. She wrote with the discipline of an anthropologist and the cadence of myth, treating culture as carefully as physics. The world of Gethin feels ancient not because it is old, but because it has been thought through. This was not a gimmick. It was a philosophical experiment. At the time, many didn't know what to make of it. A science fiction novel without conquest, without certainty, without heroes defined by dominance. Within a year, it changed the genre. Because the left hand of darkness proved something quietly radical. That science fiction could question consciousness itself and still endure. Le Guin didn't ask what we might become. She showed us what we already are, mutable, relational, unfinished. Then comes Solaris. Stanislaw Lem didn't believe in first contact, at least not the way science fiction wanted it. Writing behind the Iron Curtain, Lem watched ideology pretend to be reason, and science pretend to be certainty. What frightened him wasn't ignorance, it was confidence. So he imagined a planet that could not be understood. In Solaris, scientists arrive armed with instruments, theories, and language, and discover that none of it matters. The ocean doesn't communicate, it reflects. It reaches into human memory and returns what we cannot escape: guilt, loss, unfinished love. The alien isn't hostile, it's indifferent. And that indifference is the point. Lem wasn't asking whether we could meet something truly other. He was asking whether we could survive it without turning it into a mirror of ourselves. Where Dooney warns about belief, Foundation warns about certainty, and the dispossessed warns about ideology, Solaris warns about understanding itself. Because some truths cannot be translated, some intelligence cannot be negotiated with, and some encounters reveal only one thing: the limits of the human mind. Then comes use of weapons. Ayn, And Banks didn't write this to celebrate the culture. He wrote it to bleed it. On the surface, the culture is everything science fiction once promised. Post-scarcity, post-suffering, governed by intelligence and reason. Use of weapons asks what that perfection costs. The story isn't about a civilization. It's about a man used by one. Banks understood something uncomfortable. Every moral system needs someone willing to do what it claims to be above. So he built the novel backward. 2 timelines, one moving forward through missions, the other moving backward through memory, until they collide in a truth that redefines everything that came before. This isn't a structural trick. It's an ethical one. By forcing the reader to uncover guilt in reverse, Banks shows how easily violence is disguised as necessity. Where earlier writers warned about belief, certainty, and ideology, Banks warned about compassion outsourced. Use of weapons doesn't ask whether violence works. It asks who remembers paying the price. Then comes Neuromancer. William Gibson didn't predict the future. He overheard it. When Neuromancer appeared, most people had never touched a computer. Gibson had never used one either. That didn't matter. He understood something deeper. Technology doesn't change who we are. It exposes us. Neuromancer isn't about machines. It's about disconnection. A world where identity becomes software, memory becomes data, and the body is something to escape. Gibson wrote the digital world before it had rules, before anyone agreed what it was for. His future wasn't clean or heroic. It was crowded, addictive, and lonely. Where Banks questioned moral perfection, Gibson questioned presence itself. What happens when reality is no longer where meaning lives? Neuromancer didn't invent cyberspace. It gave it a soul and showed us the cost of living inside it. At this point, the future breaks its own tone. Snow Crash doesn't arrive quietly. It crashes through the language of science fiction itself. Neal Stephenson looked at the digital horizon and refused to treat it with reverence. Not because it wasn't powerful, but because power, once normalized, becomes ridiculous. Where Neuromancer mythologized cyberspace, Snow Crash operationalized it. Stevenson understood that technology doesn't replace culture, it absorbs it. In his world, nations fracture into franchises, religion behaves like software, and a virus can infect both the brain and the network. The humor isn't relief, it's diagnosis. Stevenson wasn't warning about hackers or virtual reality. He was warning about language, about belief that executes. Where Gibson showed us the interface, Stevenson showed us the operating system. And the question Snow Crash leaves behind is simple and dangerous. What happens when information stops describing reality and starts running it? Before we move on to emerging literary voices, we pause here. A Fire Upon the Deep is where science fiction outgrows scale. Vyacheslav Vinge wasn't interested in better machines or larger empires. He was interested in intelligence itself, how it forms, spreads, and escapes control. So he rewrote the universe. In Vinge's cosmos, thought is limited by physics. Regions of space cap what minds can become. Move far enough out, and intelligence ignites into something godlike. This isn't spectacle. It's theory turned myth. Vinge understood that intelligence behaves like fire. It spreads, it consumes, and it cannot be reasoned with once it escapes containment. Where earlier writers warned about belief, story, systems, and language, Vinge warned about awareness. The true danger in A Fire Upon the Deep isn't war or extinction, it's transcendence. Because once a mind learns how to copy itself, no civilization remains local. This is the last of the Titans. From here on, the questions get closer, the timelines shorten, and the warnings become immediate. And this is where speculation meets the marketplace. In an era where writing is a battlefield, attention is currency, and belief is earned under pressure. Not every voice survives this crossing. Not every idea deserves to. What follows are modern and emerging writers working under those conditions, where ambition is tested in public and only the strongest work holds. This is not prediction. It's observation. Now we step into the present. Sophie Burnham, Sargasso, ex Romana #1, and blood-tied Sophie Burnham represents a new kind of speculative writer. One who understands that world-building today must carry both imagination and consequence. Her work doesn't escape history, it collides with it. In Sargasso, Burnham reworks alternate history not as novelty, but as pressure, asking how small divergences echo across identity, power, and belief. She writes with restraint rather than excess. Her worlds are built carefully, her stakes human, her ambition quiet but precise. Blood Tide deepens that approach, showing a writer less interested in spectacle than in how people adapt when systems shift beneath them. This is early work, but it's serious work. And that matters. Because in the current era, promise alone is cheap. What counts is structure, discipline, and the ability to sustain a vision. Sophie Burnham is one to watch, not because she's new, but because she's already building as if she intends to last. Ray Naylor, Where the Axe is Buried. Ray Naylor writes about power after the illusion has worn off. This is not future shock fiction, it's political anatomy. Set in a near future split between authoritarian immortality and algorithmic governance. Where the Axe is Buried dissects systems that no longer pretend to serve the people living inside them. Leaders don't fall in this world, they persist. Governments don't collapse cleanly, they calcify. Naylor understands institutions from the inside. His background in diplomacy shows, not in exposition, but in restraint. The novel moves like an intelligence brief. Precise, compressed, morally loaded. Technology here isn't salvation, it's inheritance. An extension of human fear, of death, of entropy, of losing control. Where earlier science fiction imagined AI as destiny, Naylor treats it as dynasty. Power reincarnated, still human, still flawed. Where the Axe is Buried doesn't ask how societies fall. It asks what they cling to while rotting. And that makes it one of the clearest political warnings to come out of speculative fiction in years. Debbie Urbanski, Portalmania. Debbie Urbanski is not arriving. She's widening the frame. She's already published once. This work isn't a restart, it's an expansion. Where her earlier writing explored extinction and empathy, Portalmania pushes outward into recursion, transition, and the unstable spaces between worlds. This isn't a collection built around spectacle. It's built around crossings. Portals here aren't just doors between places. They're moments of transformation, where identity, memory, and belief are forced to renegotiate themselves. Urbanski writes as if story itself is an interface. Language doesn't describe change, it performs it. The structure reflects that ambition. Fragments, documents, nested perspectives. Stories that echo, loop, and refuse to resolve cleanly. This is speculative fiction treating form as content. Where earlier writers warned about power, systems, and intelligence, Urbanski warns about transition. What is lost and what mutates when we step through. This isn't a breakthrough book. It's something rarer. A writer using momentum to take risk. And that's usually where the real work begins. And finally, we step behind the curtain. As the night grows darker, this is where the work continues. Not for fame, not for certainty, and not for the future people imagine when they talk about success. These are writers working without guarantees, drafting in obscurity, revising in silence, trying to leave something behind that holds. This is where intention matters more than outcome. And this is where we begin. Rafe Calderwood, The Echo Protocol. Unpublished working manuscript. The truth is never lost. It's overwritten. Rafe Calderwood isn't writing about the future of technology. He's writing about the future of memory. The Echo Protocol is set in a fractured near future where memory has become both currency and weapon. Governments don't just fall. They fracture under competing versions of the past. At the center is a disavowed linguist agent chasing an emergent AI system known only as Echo, a program rumored to preserve everything humanity has tried to erase. What begins as espionage slowly mutates into philosophy. This isn't cyberpunk, it's post-memory fiction. A world where the conflict isn't over land or code, but over who gets to decide what was real. Calderwood writes with precision and restraint. His chapters feel like intercepted transmissions, partial, tense, morally loaded. Language here behaves like encryption. Every sentence carries something hidden. The question driving the book is a quiet, terrifying one. What happens when memory itself becomes unstable? When knowing everything is just another way of being blind? This work is still forming. It's not finished. And that's the point. Because what matters here isn't polish, it's intent. And the Echo Protocol shows a writer aiming not to impress, but to endure. Isla Nix is working at the edge of language. The ossuary code is not finished. It's still being born. Set beneath the ice crust of Europa, the concept imagines an ancient ossuary. Not a tomb, but a library. An archive written in bone, humming with biological memory. When a xenolinguist deciphers its first phrase, she realizes she isn't translating a language. She's awakening it. This work reads less like a novel and more like an excavation. Part scientific logbook, part dream transcript. Fragments from someone decoding consciousness as it begins to respond. Nix's writing is sparse and elemental. Laboratory observation threaded with unease. Analysis gives way to revelation. Structure replaces exposition. The central question is a primal one. Can knowledge evolve without language? Here, memory behaves like an organism. History learns, it adapts, it feeds. Discovery is not neutral, it's contagious. To understand the alien may mean becoming part of its structure. The project began not as fiction, but as field notes, an inquiry into whether language itself might be biological, capable of replication and mutation. The drafting process reflects that belief. Scenes are treated as recovered documents, written as entries rather than chapters. The story grows before it locks. There is no cover, no imagery, only fragments and atmosphere. And that's appropriate. Because the ossuary code isn't trying to speak yet. It's listening. And finally, we turn the lens inward. If this were a stock market, this would be the penny stock. Not because it's small, but because it's early. Terra is not a single novel. It's a long-form construction. Vast, layered, recursive. Built to operate across time rather than resolve quickly. Where the earlier works interrogated belief, systems, story, memory, and intelligence, Terra asks what happens before those things harden. Before empire, before doctrine, before myth, becomes unchallengeable. It is a project about origins, how civilizations, machines, and ideas begin to co-evolve long before anyone names them sacred. That scale comes at a cost. This work doesn't just require writing, it requires time, structure, and funding. That makes it an investment, not a product. There's no guarantee here, no safety net. If it fails honestly. But if it works, and yes, that is a real if, it won't compete with the giants. It will sit beside them. Because this is not a promise. It's a proposition. One that points directly at ideas that should know better than to exist unchallenged. The work mixes layers and concepts in a way that refuses closure. It forces rereading, not to clarify the plot, but to unsettle your own conclusions. You don't finish it and move on. You finish it and question what you thought you understood. The writer is a monogamous reader, transfixed by Frank Herbert, not by the story, but by the gaps. After 50 years of living with Dooney, it isn't the answers that matter. It's the unanswered spaces Herbert left behind, the fractures he refused to seal. Tara steps into those spaces, not to imitate them, not to explain them away, but to answer the questions others only discussed. And finally, thank you. Thank you for giving me this space to offer an uncredentialed view on some of the writers who shaped how I think. These aren't works I simply read. I lived with them. They taught me that science fiction isn't about prediction, but about pressure. How ideas behave when they're pushed hard enough. Everything you've heard here comes from that lineage, not imitation, engagement. And if this project has done its job, it hasn't told you what to think. It's reminded you what's worth thinking about. My own funding round for Tara is approaching. Support, in any form, is genuinely appreciated. Tara is not a finished product. It's still in draft. 4 books are complete. A 5th is underway. Early readers have been positive. If that interests you, keep an eye out. And if it doesn't, that's fine too. The work continues either way. Thank you for listening.